Every homeowner thinking about selling has a number. They've had it in their head for months, sometimes years. It came from a Zillow estimate, or what a neighbor got, or just a feeling. And here's the problem. It's not just that the number is wrong. It's that they're treating equity like it's fixed, like it's sitting there guaranteed, waiting to be collected. It isn't. Equity is not absolute, and not all of it can be extracted. Those two facts alone explain most of the broken deals, failed listings, and disappointed sellers I've seen across mid-Michigan. I'm Mahmoud Gassama, certified negotiation expert, Vertical View Real Estate. And today we're going to break down exactly what your home equity actually is, what determines it, and what can silently take it away before you ever get to closing. Let's start with what equity actually is, because most people have a loose definition that gets them into trouble. Equity is not what your house is worth. It's the difference between what you can realistically sell it for in today's market and the total of everything owed against it. That gap is what you walk away with. And here's what makes this complicated. Both sides of that equation move. The market shifts. Your property condition changes, for better or worse. Obligations accumulate. So the number on one side of that equation is not what it was 3 years ago, and neither is the number on the other side. That gap, that's your real equity. And the gap between what you think you have and what you can actually pocket at closing, that's where most sellers get a very unpleasant surprise. In my 20 plus years working with sellers across Genesee County and mid-Michigan, I've identified 3 factors that determine how much of your equity is actually extractable. Every conversation I have with a seller starts here. Factor 1, how long you've owned the property. The longer you've owned, the more principal you've paid down, and the more market appreciation you've likely accumulated over time. Time is usually working in your favor, but time alone doesn't guarantee extractable equity. I've sat with sellers who've owned a property for 25 years and still couldn't net what they needed because of what happened or didn't happen during those 25 years. Length of ownership opens the door. It doesn't guarantee what's behind it. Factor 2, improvements, and specifically whether they're congruent with what today's market expects. Now, when I say improvements, most sellers immediately think renovation, new kitchen, addition, major project. And yes, those matter. But there's a category of improvement that most sellers overlook. And it's the one that protects the most equity for the least cost. Experienced agents call it the refresh. A refresh is not a renovation. It's a targeted preparation of the property's presentation before it goes live. And it typically comes down to 3 things. First, clean, not tidy, clean, professional grade, top to bottom, every surface, every fixture, every corner. A home that reads as clean signals to buyers and to their inspector that the property has been cared for. That signal has monetary value. Its absence has a cost. Second, paint, fresh, neutral interior paint throughout. This is consistently one of the highest return pre-listing investments available. It eliminates dated colors, covers years of scuffs and wear, and gives buyers the psychological sense of a clean slate. The cost is modest. The impact on perceived value is not. Third, floors. Buyers notice floors immediately and they budget to replace them if they look worn. But replacement is the last resort, not the first move. Carpets that are structurally sound can be professionally cleaned and stretched back to a presentable state. Older hardwood that has dulled over time can be refinished, restored to a condition that reads as a feature, not a liability. Here's the key point. Every dollar a seller does not spend on a refresh before listing is not a dollar saved. It is a dollar offered to the buyer as a negotiating lever. Buyers are not subtle about this. They will price the condition into their offer. The only question is whether the seller controls that number T or the buyer does. Factor 3, everything owed against the property. And I mean everything. The obvious one is your mortgage balance, but the list goes further than that. Home equity lines of credit, tax liens, judgment lines from old legal disputes, unpaid contractor claims, estate complications. These things attach to a property and they can sit there invisible until a title search pulls them to the surface. Every dollar of obligation reduces what's left to extract. And here's the part sellers underestimate. A lien discovered at closing doesn't just reduce your check, it can kill the deal entirely. After weeks or months of being on the market, under contract, planning your next move, the deal collapses because of something that was always there. This is why I run title early. Before we price, before we market, before we accept anything, because what you think you own and what the title confirms you own, those need to match before we put the property in front of buyers. Now, I want to go one level deeper because understanding these three factors isn't enough unless you accept two fundamental truths about equity that most sellers have never been told. Truth one, equity is not absolute. It moves. A rising market builds it. A softening market compresses it. A kitchen updated to current standards expands it. A roof that's been deferred for 8 years quietly erodes it. Equity is not a number you lock in when you buy the house and collect when you sell. It is a living figure, and it's been changing since the day you moved in. Truth two, not all equity is extractable. Some of it exists only on paper. It's real in theory, but the market won't pay for it in the condition the property is in. A house worth $200,000 move-in ready may only support $165,000 as it sits today. That $35,000 gap isn't gone, it's locked. It requires decisions the seller hasn't made yet. This is why two sellers on the same street, similar purchase price, similar timeline, can walk away from closing with dramatically different results. The equity one of them thought was guaranteed simply wasn't extractable. That's not a market problem. That's an information problem. I want to make a distinction that almost never gets made in this industry, and it should be made first before any other conversation about your home. Equity and wealth are not the same thing. Equity is a position on a balance sheet. It is the gap between what your property is worth and what you owe against it. It tells you where you stand today. It is a number. Wealth is what you build with equity. Once it's extracted, deployed, and working, wealth is equity converted into something productive. A paid-off next home, a retirement account, an investment that generates income. Equity that sits trapped in a property you're not actively managing is not building wealth. It is sitting still. And sitting still in this economy is not neutral. Here is what the data says. Since the start of 2024, consumer prices rose 2.9%. Through 2025, another 2.7%. By May of 2026, the most recent federal data, the annual inflation rate had climbed to 4.2%, the highest reading since April 2023. Shelter inflation running at 3.4%, energy up 23.5%, food up over 3%. What this means in plain terms, the dollar your home equity represents today buys less than it did in January 2024, and it will buy less still in January 2027 if this rate holds. Equity that is not appreciating at or above the rate of inflation is quietly losing real value. You are not preserving wealth by waiting. You are allowing inflation to extract a portion of it without your permission, 1 month at a time. Now apply this to the seller holding an overpriced listing, skipping the refresh, waiting for the right buyer. Every month on market, carrying costs. Every price reduction, equity surrendered. Every month at 4% inflation, purchasing power declining. These are not three separate problems. They are three mechanisms working at the same time to shrink the gap between what you imagined you had and what you will actually be able to deploy. So here is the question I want every seller to sit with. Are you protecting your equity, or are you bankrupting your future wealth? Those are two different postures, and only one of them is rational, given what inflation is doing right now. Let me give you a real picture of what this looks like. I know a seller who's been on the market for several months now. He's watched comparable properties in his area close, But those properties, updated, move-in ready, price to condition. His equity on paper is substantial, but a meaningful portion of it is locked behind deferred improvements the market simply refuses to price past. He hasn't made those improvements. So he's been doing something instead, price reductions, one after another. Here's the thing about that strategy. Every reduction narrows the gap between what he hoped to walk away with and what he actually will. Every additional month adds carrying costs that eat into whatever's left. That's not a negotiating position. That's equity erosion in slow motion. And it was avoidable with the right information at the front end of this process, not the back. So what do sellers who actually maximize their equity do differently? First, they know their payoff before they set their price, not an estimate, not what they think they owe. The actual payoff figure from their servicer, so they know exactly what comes off the top at closing before anything else is calculated. Second, they do an honest condition assessment, not an emotional one, not "we've done a lot of work to this house." A market honest look at what condition the property is actually in, what buyers will expect to see at that price point, and whether there's a gap between the two that needs to be addressed before listing, not after the first offer falls apart. Third, they run title early, before pricing, before marketing, before accepting anything, because a surprise discovered at the closing table isn't a surprise you can recover from gracefully. It's a deal killer with weeks of your life already invested in the transaction. Do those three things and you show up to the market with clarity instead of assumptions. That's when sellers actually win. Logic only leads to one answer here. Equity moves. Not all of it is extractable. And in a 4.2% inflation environment, equity that isn't managed and eventually deployed is losing real purchasing power every month it sits. The emotional answer is to wait, to hold price, to skip the preparation. The logical answer is to treat your home as the financial instrument it actually is. Prepare it, price it correctly, extract the equity on your terms, and put it to work before inflation, carrying costs, and market drift do the math for you. How do you want to protect that investment, Charles? That's the only question that matters. And the answer starts with knowing the real number, not the Zestimate, not what your neighbor got, but the actual extractable equity position on your specific property in this specific market right now. That conversation is free. Give me a call at 248-207-6229 or find us at verticalviewrealestate.com. I'm Mahmoud Gassama, Vertical View Real Estate. Let's protect what you've built.